Good morning. This is a recording for Saturday, May 4th. In the last couple of sessions, we talked about the importance of becoming fluent in speaking shame. Since shame is such a secretive emotion, we unconsciously try to mask it even from ourselves in every way possible. But if we want to develop shame resilience, we must learn how to translate some of our painful experiences into the language that allows us to admit that we are, in fact, in shame. As we have learned, shaming comments can be direct, indirect, manipulative, intentional, and even unintentional. What they all share in common is how much they hurt and how they send us reeling and desperately searching for protection. Unfortunately, even unintentional shame is still painful. But nevertheless, it is important to recognize the motivation behind shame, whether it's intentional or unintentional. And to be sure, identifying this distinction is not very easy. It assumes that we know the motivation of the person who has made the comment or triggered the shame. Sometimes the motivation is clear and sometimes it isn't. Working our way out of shame web can be very difficult because, like most traps, it entangles you the more you struggle and fight. To free ourselves, we need to move slowly, deliberately, and with a tremendous amount of awareness about what we're doing and why. When we learn to speak the language of shame, that is to recognize our experience as shame and express our feelings around it, we can address any shaming comments, intentional or unintentional, constructively. So let's look at a couple of examples from Brené Brown's research and see how we may be able to address them using the fourth element of shame resilience, speaking shame. Or said another way, how we can respond to shaming comments in a constructive versus destructive way. Here's example number 1. Every time I go home to visit my mom, the first thing she says, "My God, you're still fat." And the last thing she says when I walk out the door is, "Hopefully you can lose some weight." So in this case, the mother's comments seem to be very intentionally shaming. A destructive reaction to this, and of course, a very natural and common reaction, would be to say something like, "Just get off my back. I'm sick of you saying shit about my weight. I'm just sick of it." But that doesn't really get us anywhere. In many ways, it is actually a way of protecting the person who is shaming us from hearing, "You're hurting me," and protecting ourselves from having to admit, "I am hurt." It seems counterintuitive, but telling someone how we feel takes more courage and is often more powerful than verbally attacking them. So the way we might address constructively this comment would be something like this: "Mom, I feel so ashamed when you say hurtful things about my weight. It's very painful for me. It's like all you care about is how I look. If you're trying to make me feel bad so I'll change, that doesn't work. It makes me feel worse about myself and our relationship. You really hurt me when you do that." Big difference, right? And now let's look at example number 2. When I became a cancer survivor, everyone at work thought, "She cannot do this anymore." Everyone at home thought, she cannot do this anymore. And everyone treated me like I was completely incapable of anything. Here, the end result of this treatment was a shaming experience, but the motivation might have been sympathy or people's own discomfort with the concept of surviving cancer. Unintentional shame often happens when people are trying to be helpful, but end up either giving unsolicited advice, judging, or shutting down the conversation out of their own discomfort. So, a distractive reaction to such unintentional shaming could be shutting down, isolating, or perhaps anger, frustration. The way we might be able to address that kind of attitude constructively is by saying something like, "Since I've returned to work, I feel that you're treating me differently because of my cancer. Even if you're trying to help me or support me, treating me differently makes me feel alone and like an outsider. I want and need to know that I am the same person and that you will treat me that way." Admitting we are experiencing shame, even if it is just admitting it to ourselves, feels risky. Brené Brown says, "I am a social worker and a shame researcher, and putting my emotional needs on the table still feels scary to me." We feel vulnerable and exposed. And to make matters worse, sometimes sharing doesn't work. It can overwhelm people, and they can throw up their own shame screens, and that will be painful. But when you learn to speak shame, it allows you to pick up on some of the subtle language of the shame web. When you hear, "You're so sensitive," or "I didn't realize you were so fragile," or "Why are you so defensive?" or maybe even "It's all in your head," then know that this is the language used to shame and to defend shaming. Another interesting motivation behind shame is honesty. Brené Brown says, "Honesty is the best policy, but honesty that's motivated, oh my God, honesty is the best policy, but honesty that is motivated by shame, anger, fear, or hurt is not really honesty. It's shame, anger, fear, or hurt disguised as honesty." Just because something is accurate or factual doesn't mean it can't be used in a destructive manner. The shame web is often baited with honesty, and it gives the shamer an easy comeback. "Well, I'm just telling you the truth. These are just the facts." So yeah, this is something to think about. So today, let's do a practice around that, trying to find motivation behind some shaming experiences. As always, take a comfortable position and take a few moments to settle. Settle into your body, into your heart, your mind. Settle into this moment, right here, right now. Your breath nice and soft, natural. As always, see if you can find a sense of spaciousness in your breathing, a sense of freedom, so that all the experiences of the present moment can flow through you as energy that they are, without struggle. Now take a moment to remember a shaming experience that involved an intentional shaming comment. Intentional from your point of view, of course. And the motivation behind it could have been anything: anger, judgment, fear, or maybe pure shame. But whatever it was, this comment resulted in you feeling shame. Reflecting back on that situation, when this comment was made, how did you react? Did you admit, even if it's just to yourself, that you were hurt? Or did you lash out or shut down? Was your reaction helpful to getting yourself out of feeling hurt, out of feeling ashamed? How might you respond to such comments now that you are becoming more fluent in the language of shame? What would you say? And now take a moment to remember a shaming experience that involved an unintentional shaming comment. Again, from your perspective, it was unintentional. The motivation behind it could have been the person's own discomfort with the situation, or them trying to make things better, or whatever else. But again, even though it was unintentional, your shame was triggered. When this unintentional comment was made, how did you react? Was your reaction helpful to getting yourself out of feeling hurt, out of feeling ashamed? How might you respond to such comments now that you're becoming more fluent in the language of shame? What would you actually say to the person? Now place your hands on your heart and send the energy of loving kindness to yourself. May I be filled with loving kindness. May I be well in body and mind. May I feel loved, cared for, at ease. May I know that I am enough. May I remember that I'm never alone. May I touch deep, natural peace. And now gently let go of the practice. As always, scan your body. Notice what's going on for you right now. Physically, emotionally, mentally. How are you really? And as you go through your day today, I invite you to continue with this reflection. How do you usually respond to shaming comments? Whether they are intentional or unintentional in your opinion. Is your habitual response destructive, that is to say, brings more shame in, or constructive, helps you get out of shame? How would you modify your response now that you're becoming more fluent in the language of shame? As always, enjoy your discoveries. And as always, if you feel inspired, please share your thoughts. Thank you so much for being here today. Have a lovely day, and I will see you tomorrow.